This week on the Manufacturing Culture Podcast, we walk straight into a room full of skeptics with Ellen Feldman-Ornato and Jenny Drescher, two women who were told, don't bother, these guys will eat you alive. They didn't just survive, they flipped the whole damn script. Welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. Jenny Drescher and Ellen Feldman-Ornato, how are you doing today?
Oh, it's fantastic.
I'm so good I can't stand myself. It's Friday. I'm happy.
That's why I record on Fridays. I've got dogs barking in the background, but it's a good day. So what could go wrong, right?
Well, we'll get dogs barking in the background here if that'll make you feel more at home, right?
Perfect. It'll just be a theme. We'll have dogs throughout the entire episode. It'll be a good time. So my first icebreaker for both of you today is, if your life were a movie, what genre would it be? What would be the opening scene? And who would play you?
Genre? What genre would it be?
Yeah.
I'd have to go with like creepy action adventure, right? Like the action adventure, but the ones that have like a little twist.
Sure.
You know, like something that, you know, like just a little darkness, like The Witcher or Yellow Jackets. You know what I mean? Just like a little minor key action.
I like it. I haven't started watching Yellow Jackets yet, but I just added it to my list on Netflix. It will be watched. So creepy action adventure. Ellen, what about you?
It would probably be Ted Lasso, the movie.
Okay. Something super emotionally intelligent, bringing mental health to the forefront.
Calmness, ease, fun, connection. Yeah, that would be it. And the part of me would be played by Ellen DeGeneres. How about that?
Ellen DeGeneres. I love
Why not?
that. Jenny, what about you?
I think Glenn Close.
Okay.
Yeah, Glenn Close, right? Because she's got that like strong presence, and she can do like warm and calm and grounded, but she's also kind of a badass. And she can do sort of this, I wonder what you're thinking thing.
The creepy action movie. Okay. Yeah. And Jenny, what would the opening scene be?
Opening scene would be me coming out of the woods and looking around like, where am I? Okay. Let's go after it. Right? That would be the expression on my face. From there, I would discover that I was on a road with the traffic moving really fast, but I would just go to the edge of the road. And with my mind, I would stop the traffic so I could cross the road.
It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this before, Jim.
No, you asked the question, Jim. So that's just what went on in my head. You know, I'm an improviser, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love how well you were able to improvise that. Ellen, what about you? What's the opening scene of your Ted Lasso, the movie type movie?
It has to be opening with a scene on the pitch.
Okay.
With maybe a trophy being presented. I don't know. It's Friday.
How excited are you for the new Ted Lasso season that they're making right now?
Beyond. I'm watching the whole thing for the fourth time right now.
Okay. Yeah. I've been debating whether I go back and watch it I think that would be my fourth time through as well. But I realized I have the fourth season of The Bear that I need to watch.
Yeah.
And The Bear to me is Ted Lasso meets Goodfellas.
Yeah. On steroids.
On steroids. Like if Ted Lasso was a jerk and had to go through that journey, that's The Bear.
Yeah.
So I do like The Bear.
I do too.
Anyway. Okay. Next icebreaker. And I asked that icebreaker, the first one, because it paints a really good picture of my guests, right? It tells us who you are, like mentally, as far as what kind of movie, what genre, but then also it tells us a lot about the guests as far as who they picture playing them in a movie, right? That persona, because people tend to go to personas rather than looks when it comes to picking somebody who would represent them. So it tells us a lot about both of you as far as the personas go. And I hope I nailed it. Jenny, I just saw a very contemplative look out of you. So
no, I just was thinking that's totally true for me, because I've always, it's kind of funny because it actually shows you a big difference between our personalities as hosts on our podcast and as, you know, as different personalities in our company, Boulder Company, because our energies are really different, and it's been part of the magic of how we've been able to grow the company over the years. It's kind of awesome. I really dig your question, Jim.
I love it. All right. So the second one is, What does culture mean to you? Not like the definition of culture, but what does culture mean to you when you hear that word?
Table stakes. That's just the immediate thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Tell us more.
Culture. Culture is just table stakes. It's the thing that if you're a leader and you're not thinking about culture right now, then you are totally missing the boat. So that's immediately what pops to mind. In terms of positive culture or the cultures that we want, I think the word culture is so thrown around that people can, and you know this because you've got culture in your name, so you see all these different iterations of it,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
But so I love your question. To define it makes a ton of sense. And I wish more people spent time doing that. But good culture is just table stakes to me.
Yeah, I love that. Ellen, what about you?
I think it gets expressed, and it's very different from organization to organization, right? So there's no right culture. However, I believe there are right behaviors that build positive cultures, and there are challenging behaviors that build negative cultures. And it's the double-sided tape that has people stay and continue in companies, right? It's the stickiness, it's the glue. How many times do you hear somebody say, I feel like there's still an opportunity for me here, but the environment is horrible. Like I spend an enormous amount of my energy just like not turning around and driving home in the morning. And if you've got a critical mass of people doing that or feeling that way inside of an organization, they're not doing their best work. They're not getting the best out of each other. It's taking a toll on the entire thing. On the other hand, when cultures are really rocking and you see people who genuinely respect each other, they don't have to love each other, but they have to respect each other. Love is great, right? But they have to respect each other. They have to have an opening for each other's thoughts and opinions. Then you see generative cultures, the kinds where people want to be, the places people want to stay and bring their friends in, that magic, like, how do we attract people? Be better and you will attract people because your people will tell their people, come work here because it's better, right? It's there's a lot of magic that goes into that, right? There's some magic and a lot of intention.
Magic and intention. I love that. When I started my company in 2022, I launched it and I had done it as a side gig for a couple of years before launching my company. But I came into the scene hard as a culture consultant for manufacturing, telling manufacturers, let me diagnose your culture and I will fix it. What I quickly learned was exactly one thing that you just said, Ellen, is that it's so individualistic, company to company. And what I found even more was what I deem as a good culture may be completely toxic to somebody else and vice versa. And so digging into that whole concept, I found that it's really when you have that alignment of values between organization and employees, and those values are lived and the behaviors are that follow, that's when you have a good culture, because it is so individualistic. And it could be something that, to one thing that is great for Ellen may be super toxic to me, and I may turn around and vice versa. So I love both those answers. Thank you so much for that. So Jenny, Ellen, when did your work with people and behavior start? What kind of early jobs or experiences did you have that shaped that approach to communication and leadership today that we see from the Boulder Company?
Well, I am always missing my years driving a forklift. And so I started my career working in food service and retail and really, hands-on labor-y kind of jobs, and got into distribution and operations and loved forklifts. And
how could you not?
Well, yeah, there's nothing to not love about a forklift. But a lot of my work was really being sort of a frontline person and understanding that journey and understanding just how hard that is, just how much real labor is involved in that, and getting that perspective on what it's like to be low on the totem pole has been an incredible gift in the work that we do, because what it allows me to do, I'll just speak for myself, not for the whole company, but it allows me, when I'm going in and I'm working with frontline workers, I'm not coming across as some sort of, well, here's this lofty theoretical thing that we should be trying to do, and blah, 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 and I know so much better. It's the exact thing you just named, Jim, which is, well, here's your problem. And, this is what you should do. Because what I hate about that attitude from consultants or from leaders anywhere is that it's an invitation to take ownership from people. So, I have long said that my experiences being a frontline worker activated this deeper sense of ownership for me for how I want to be participating in work. And that spills over into how do I want to be participating in owning the culture that I'm a part of if I'm a worker. We're big on ownership, that ownership is not a thing that comes from leaders. Culture doesn't come from leaders. Great behaviors don't come from. They are participants, but it belongs to everybody. So I think that being able to come through the levels of being a frontline worker and a middle manager really has allowed me to shape a lot of our work around that. And it makes a really big difference for people, because when you go into a room and you're doing culture work with people, if you turn the question back on them and say, how are you participating in this good thing? How are you participating in this challenge? How are you taking ownership of X, Y, Z? It's a totally different conversation. And it activates something really cool in people. People are like, wait, you're not coming in and telling me what to do?
Yes, I love it. I love it. What about you, Ellen?
So I grew up in a family business. My father was a retailer, and it was like the Army and Navy version of Cheers, right? People would walk in. We were expected to wait on people, to get to know them, to remember things about their family. We did free alterations while you wait. So we 3 kids were in the back running a sweatshop in the back, running sewing machines, and then we vacuumed at the end of the night and balanced the check registers and all of that, And so very early on, I think I started working at my dad's store at 12. It was all about like, how do we create this community of my father's place going forward? And then I decided I should go to college. So I went to college and got undergraduate and graduate degrees in urban planning and worked as a city planner in a couple of different municipalities. And then I worked in economic development for 4 years. And then I jumped the fence and went into the private sector and worked in corporate community relations and public relations and sponsorships and special events. And like all along the way, I kept landing in companies that had amazing cultures. It was dumb luck, really, with some notable exceptions, that in these workplaces, they were consistently kind and friendly.
Interesting.
And the regional retailer that I worked on my first day on my interview, and I was going to a wedding after the interview, and I walked in, and the president of the company said, we don't dress up here. He said, we want everybody to know that they can look casual all the time. And he said, you'll notice there's no names on the doors. There's no names and there's no titles. I'm like, how the hell am I going to figure out where people are? But he's like, your title doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is who you are and what you can do.
Yeah.
And so that sort of ethos, which came from the founder of the company, which is never forget where you came from, is still a very strong drumbeat for me. Right. And it allows us to go into any organization and be as comfortable talking to the people on the production floor as the people who are in the senior seats, because we know enough to be talking to the people in the senior seats, and we're humble enough to realize that we can learn from the people on the floor.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
So that's sort of and Jenny and I are very different trajectories. Again, you said you looked at our LinkedIn profiles, and we just have very different trajectories that came together around play and improvisation. So.
I love that. And so tell us about that moment where you two met and decided to create the Boulder Company.
We actually have known each other for over 20 years. Okay. So we met in another lifetime, in another community, a different business community, and became friends. So for years, Ellen was doing her own thing, and I was still working in distribution and manufacturing. Okay. And the whole while that I was doing that, I was learning coaching and facilitation off the side of my desk. Ellen was running her own training and learning company. So that was just a relationship that had existed for a very long time. And then as friends. And then I found this amazing organization called the Applied Improvisation Network. And I had already I was a theater kid a bunch growing up. So I did a lot of theater and improvisation and music and stuff when I was growing up, and then started it again as an adult many years later and said, oh my God, why did I ever stop doing this? This is the most fun ever. right? Because I figured out, wait, this makes me not afraid to fail. Wait, this makes me, like speak up more easily. Wait, this makes me a really good listener. All of that. I mean, improvisation gives us a ton of stuff that helps us do life. I mean, every single moment, you know this, Jim. I mean, nobody wakes up with a script. So we have to be able to wake up every day and work with what is
Make
and
stuff
run
up.
with it. The entire game of life and improvisation is just doing it on stage. So applied improvisation is actually a cool field. And I grabbed Ellen and I said, come to this event with me in Texas. And she said, okay.
Texas, let's go.
Yeah, it's
literally.
Austin,
like Austin, yes.
Yeah.
I don't even care what I'm doing. Right.
Town.
It's
Austin
so much
is an
fun.
amazing town. So we went to this conference of the Applied Improvisation Network and met all these cool people doing this kind of work. And we're sitting there on a street curb or something eating tacos and said, why aren't we working together? And then we just started working together. And next thing we know, the business like had birthed itself.
It birthed itself.
That's
and we
awesome.
started off, Jim, just saying, what do people need in the marketplace? And since we were both entrepreneurs and we were both generating leads by going to events, we're like, well, let's look at the events first. What's happening there? And just like in industry, people need to figure out how to be the best representation of themselves. And what would so often happen is, at these chamber events, they go around and they'd say, you have 30 seconds, introduce yourself and what company you're from, blah, blah, blah. And people would stand up and die. You'd see all the color drain from their face and they'd be sweating profusely and their throat would tighten and they couldn't even say their name, never mind what they did in a way that would make other people curious.
Yes.
Or they were just boring.
Boring, right? Or
they were
sorry,
but they're just boring. Sometimes,
or they would vomit on you. There are any number of permutations of the people we would meet, and it's not any shade on them, except to say that they never took the time to really learn how to do this well and develop a level of comfort and do the reps in the gym of trying and failing and realizing they weren't going to die if they introduced themselves poorly, to get better at that. And so that's where we started. We created a whole speaking curriculum around helping people show up as the most powerful and best representation of themselves.
I love it.
So that they could be more successful as entrepreneurs. And then we started working with local nonprofits, and then we worked with their national organizations. And then we swung over to AEC because we were invited to speak at a large regional AEC, Architecture, Engineering, Construction Conference. And then we started doing more work in AEC, working with engineering and architecture firms and construction companies. And then we found manufacturing. It was like, it's so adjacent to, and a lot of the behaviors in engineering and construction are very similar to some of the, there's engineers are everywhere, and really engineers and that sort of engineering, high-tech automation focus creates a certain persona.
Yes.
And they need support in the workplace.
Absolutely.
I feel like, honestly, for me, starting to work in manufacturing felt like a homecoming, because coming out of labor and coming out of that space just allows me to really support people who work in that space in a way that is nourishing. Right? It's nourishing for me. So I get to keep on building my skills and relate to folks, because it matters. It matters how you feel about your work. And so being able to do that for people is such a privilege. I mean, it's an incredible privilege to be able to do that for people.
Yeah. So talk to us about behavioral change, right? Because that's not something that's easy to get people to do. Anybody, clients, it's very tough to do. So how do we get them to actually make that shift? Not necessarily nod along with your workshops, not sit in a lunch and learn and smile and say, yeah, that sounds great, but then actually go practice that. How do we do that?
That's actually our favorite subject. And actually,
that's why I'm asking you.
It's the differentiator, really, we think the distinction between training that's effective, development that's effective, and not, is if somebody, so there's one body of knowledge, which is technological knowledge. I go in, I learn how to put A into B to create C. That is specific, intentional. If I learn it, I can take the book and go do that again. Unfortunately, you can't read one book or go to one class on how to become a better listener and actually get better at it, because you have to first notice how you do it and what your defaults are. And then you have to learn a replacement behavior, like instead of doing this, I'm going to do this. And then you have to actually practice that over time. Otherwise, I'm sure you've seen this. You come away from a conference and you've got like a notebook full of great ideas, and you go right back into the cesspool that you came from, and all the great ideas they stay in the book on the shelf. Or you as an individual say, I'm going to do this one thing. And unless you have an ability to like keep yourself on track over time, that's going to dissipate too. So it's really like, how do you create that synergy between people to hold each other accountable for the behaviors? And how do we create small enough behavioral changes so that individuals are willing to take it on? And now I will hand the talking stick to Jenny, because this is
no, that was great. I loved it.
Well, I don't know. You said it really well, Ellen. I'm listening. I'm going, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's the whole thing. So I guess what I would add to what my partner in crime has articulated is that there's this interesting tendency that we have in modern life to, when we don't know what to do, or we're faced with a challenge, or we're trying to advance towards promotion, or even if we're just trying to go from frontline worker to frontline supervisor, in so many different arenas, and this happens at the top levels too, we have all been conditioned and trained to go look for information as a way of solving problems or growing who we are. And frankly, I don't really care what somebody knows, because I can't observe what somebody knows. I can't experience it in the same way as I can experience what they're demonstrating, what they're embodying, how they're doing the behaving. So we all really need to be starting to move away from this. I'm not saying college doesn't matter. I'm not saying we don't need the knowledge. Like, we need all that knowledge, but we need to start paying attention to the idea that what I do and who I'm being is as important as what I know. Because an example of this, you asked about behavior change. So say you have a leader who is trying to become a better listener. If he's read that book, the reason the reading of that book is limited in its effectiveness is because all he's done is consume knowledge.
Yes.
He's not demonstrating it.
Yes.
And that's what we've all been trained to do. Like, oh, I want a promotion. I better go get a master's degree. Time out. Maybe that's not the right answer. Right? People, I better go get another certification. I better go do this, as opposed to, wait, we live in this really busy, noisy world. So what if we calm down and think about one or two micro behaviors that will actually move the needle 10 times further on what we're trying to do than going and getting another degree? Not that I'm saying don't get a degree if you really want one, but get it because you want it, not because you think it's going to move you forward.
And I fell into that trap because a company that I worked for said, when I said, what's my career path look like here? They said, well, you're at the top of where you can be now. Go get a degree and we will move you into our corporate office. I went and got the degree. They paid for a portion of it, not all of it, because whatever. And then I finished my degree, my advanced degree, have an MBA. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go into corporate. And all of a sudden I was too valuable with that new degree in the level that I was within the organization for them to move me up. So here I am with a new degree, and I'm unable to practice that new degree in my current role because it was wild. So I what you just said resonated. Like, I felt it not only in my heart, but also in that like weird part of your gut that you don't like feeling things when you hear them. That's where I felt that. So thank you, and damn you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm here to make you a little uncomfortable.
Hey, that's the way you get change, right? You have to be a little uncomfortable.
Oh, funny. And I was just about to say something to make you more comfortable.
You guys are like yin and yang. This is great.
Totally.
Yes, which was that no education is wasted. Right. And you never know where it's going to pop up. When I got my master's degree in urban planning, I was 24, which is a while ago, right? Like literally 40 years ago. And here I am intersecting on a regular basis with people in economic development.
Yes.
And I took a long break from economic development. Like, I stopped working in that field a very long time ago. And here we are, and the drumbeats put us right back with state agencies and people who are working at the state level in manufacturing here in Connecticut, in helping people find access to the funding to underwrite the programs that we're doing for them through manufacturing and investment fund and things like that. So that background knowledge comes forward, comes full circle, and supports the development of our organization again in a different way and at a different level, right? So I think that whole, I agree that, the pursuit of an MBA just because that seems like the next best thing to do might not be the thing right now. And also that any knowledge you get is good knowledge. The challenge for us is that we work with so many engineers and people who are in those kinds of environments that that's their default.
Yeah.
Right? They just think they need to learn more, and it's not. They need to slow down and be different.
Yes.
And it's not different like they're bad. It's different like it could be easier for them. It could be easier for the people around them, right?
Are either of you familiar with the book, and I forget the author's name? It's called Huey's and the New Sweater. It's a children's book. Check out the book. I send it to people when they talk about being different. The whole concept, these Hueys, which are these really wildly drawn like stick figures that are, everybody looks the same. And one of the Hueys decides to get a sweater, and all of a sudden that Huey doesn't look like the rest of the Hueys.
Mm-hmm.
And that they owned that difference, that uniqueness, and didn't allow other people to pass judgment or let that judgment affect them in their wearing that new sweater. And that confidence that Huey had then permeated the rest of the Hueys, and all of a sudden it wasn't weird for somebody to be wearing a sweater, and so then everybody bought sweaters, right? And
so it gives permission. I mean, we use that term a lot. By me being this way, I give permission to people around me.
Absolutely.
To be this way and to be accepting and to be, yeah.
Well, yeah, I love what you're both saying. And Jim, what you're making me think of, I don't know if anybody can see it behind me on the wall, but I have a thing that I keep on my wall. It says, "Go deeper, not wider."
Yes.
So I guess my rant always about college is I want us to stop thinking about it as a means to an end. And this is so true at higher levels of education. And for folks who did exactly what you just did, right? You went and you said, "Oh, I went and got my MBA and I have nowhere to apply it. Yes. What do I do now that I have this thing?" And so I think that as we grow in our careers, I almost think of this as a step ladder, right? When we're early in our careers, we need to be sponges and soak up a ton of information and figure out all the things and learn how to do it and get a lot of information about, oh, this is how the working world works. But as we advance through our careers, we don't need as much working knowledge. We need to go deeper into where we have excellence and where we have expertise. And we also need to go simpler. So this reminds me of, think about any time you go to a conference and you see some amazing speaker who tells the story of how they advanced through their journey. 9 times out of 10, they're not telling you the story of all the technical know-how they have or about their MBA. They're telling you the hero's journey about, I did this and it was hard. I had to speak up in this situation. I had to dig deep and find the tenacity to power through this unbelievable challenge. All of that stuff, that doesn't come from technical information. It doesn't come from learning more. It comes from going deeper with who they are and finding the stuff that's inside that really matters. And that's what we need more than ever right now. The more we get going with technology, the more human we need to be, and the more we need to get deeper, not wider, in those skills that are uniquely human. I'm on a soapbox. I'll stop. It's that's what I really want people to start paying attention to in leadership is, let's not look at MBAs as a means to an end. Let's look at going deeper with personal skills, going deeper with listening, going deeper with really understanding. Who are you? Who are you, Jim, my colleague that we work together?
Yes.
So
one of my favorite books is that book right there. It's a yellow one. It's called Leadership BS by Jeffrey Pfeffer. And not that I'm just doing book reviews on my show today, but Leadership BS by Jeffrey Pfeffer is one of the greatest. And it really, when you said not go deeper, not wider, and kind of explained that premise, that's the first thing I went to is this leadership development industry is billions of dollars every year. And in reality, not a whole lot of new concepts have come out of the leadership development space. It's different people understanding their target audience and repackaging legacy concepts into things that resonate with their target audience, right? And so in your idea there, that your phrase there, go deeper, not wider, right? That is exactly what that's all about. Go deeper into these concepts that already exist. Don't go wider and start to absorb the Simon Sinek and the Adam Grant. If you like Simon Sinek, go deep into Simon Sinek, I guess is my simplistic, smooth brain of saying exactly what you just said. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
I think that's a fair way of putting it. And that's an awesome book, by the way. Leadership BS. I love that book.
Great work.
You know, the thing that you made me think of, Jim, is how many times with your kids, because I know you have kids, has their school decided to teach math a different way, right? Like math is still math.
Yes.
So why don't we just choose a way to teach math and do it for long enough so that kids actually learn math?
Yes.
And it's the same thing with a lot of these corporate programs, right? Is what's the flavor of the week? What's the assessment of the week? You know, very often I'll talk to somebody, we use DISC, it's a pretty straightforward assessment that we use because it's sort of a gateway to self-awareness for people. It's not the be all and end all, right? That's the beginning of the conversation. That's just to get them, to give them some data that says, this is you. And they go, oh, this is me. And then it's like, okay, great. So what does that mean that you're you? And this person is this person? And what are the obstacles to you to communicating with each other? And what happens when you're at odds with each other? How do you handle that conflict, right? So that's just the starting point. And so many companies that we encounter, they want you to come in and do a one-day wonder kind of thing where you're like, come in, I have my magic wand. Here you go. Now you're perfect.
Yes.
And the next day, the HR person calls us and say, it's amazing. There's no more BS going on between my people. Never happens, right? Because that's not a thing.
Yes.
And by the way, while they're in the class, their manager is pinging them on their cell phone and interrupting them and calling them out of the room. And then you're saying, well, that training didn't do anything. Well, excuse me. What were you actually expecting? Like, you won't even watch a TV show and let people interrupt you. Never mind putting your person in a classroom and then interrupting them every single time you need them. And then you wonder why, and you're blaming the facilitation and saying that wasn't effective. Well, no kidding. You're not setting them up to win, right? So they want behavioral change, and they want it to happen with a magic wand.
Yep. And I love that idea. And I've worked with a lot of shops that I'm not throwing any specific one. I'm definitely not going to name names that bring in, Acme Widget Company brings in consultants. I've worked with companies that have had tens, if not dozens of consultants for the last 15 years, right? And they keep bringing in consultants. They keep bringing in consultants. They think that it's this magic wand to bring in the Boulder Company or the Manufacturing Connector or any of the hundreds of other companies out there that do what we both do, different ways, but then refuse to do the work behind it, right? They think that, hey, we're going to bring in these folks. They're going to fix all of our problems, and we don't have to put in any additional effort to make the change that we want to see within our organization. Is that a fair statement?
We've definitely seen tons of that. I think that, you made the point about how there's nothing new under the sun, and it's just a matter of making the match between you and the right people that are, that really are a good fit. And I think that finding a good fit is hard for people who work in plants who are trying to solve these problems, but it's like me trying to fix my car, right? I'm not a mechanic. I don't know how to fix my car. I can look under the hood and tell you that's the battery, that's the washer fluid, but don't ask me to fix the car. So I think that there's this trap that I've seen manufacturers fall into where they know there are problems, but they don't, their expertise is in, I know how to build this pen, right? They don't know how to solve for a bunch of this stuff. It's not what they do. It's not their zone of genius. So it's our job to help them. And unfortunately, in the consulting world, there are too many people who will just stay on the fluffy top and make a lot of false promises. So that ends up being a lose-lose because it's bad for the manufacturers who are trying to find solutions, and it's bad for consultants who, like us, who we really dig in and do the work with people. Like we have approaches where we say, if you're not willing to dig in and do the work, we are not your consultants. So I think it's kind of an interesting dynamic that can go on. And it's one I think that's also changing, if I'm honest. I think there are more people who are starting to realize that a right fit matters.
Sure.
A lot.
So two quick things, and I want to ask Ellen a question here. First, I am starting to relaunching my other show. It's called Work But Make It Human. It had started as a solo podcast, a 10 to 15 minute like leadership vitamin is what I was calling it, where I dispelled leadership tactics and tools and talked about how they used to be done, and now going into how people could lead in a more human-centric way moving forward. I hated solo podcasting, so I stopped doing that, and so now I'm rebooting this as a show where I'm bringing consultants on, good consultants like yourselves, who aren't just looking at that surface level fix and riding high on long-term engagements with high pay and not delivering a whole lot of value. The bad consultants, I consider those people bad consultants. And we are tackling case studies that I see that the audience submit, that I pull off of Reddit, that you guys may have, and we're fixing these issues for the world to hear the solutions, and people can use it as a resource. I'd love to have you back on for that show. It's only going to be a monthly one, so we'll get that scheduled down the road. Would you two be interested in that?
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Totally up our alley. That sounds like a great conversation.
Yeah.
And we have a bucket full of things that we can talk through, case studies and examples that will give people a lot of real world application, because honestly, we're kind of application obsessed.
Awesome. So the next thing, Ellen, I wanted to talk to you about is, how do you vet those clients that aren't willing to do the work? I mean, we see, and Jenny just said it so well. I mean, that's not their skill set, is finding the right consultant, right? And I think it goes a little bit deeper, because a lot of manufacturers aren't great at hiring the people who work for them in the first place, right? They look for that first person who can fog a mirror, that says that they can do the job that they need done. So how do you vet on the consulting side to find the clients that are actually willing to do the work?
So that's sort of a multi-pronged thing. The first thing is that very often they find us. They've seen us speak. They've looked at the posts on LinkedIn. They understand that we're focused on behavioral change, and that we understand that happens over time. We have very specific pain points that we're listening for when they're calling us, because we know what we do and we know what we don't do. And we have a vetting process it's discovery, to be honest with you, Jim. It's really a series of questions that help us discern, did somebody tell them to go out and figure out how to fix it? How much of a handle do they have on what their actual concerns are and what might be causing it? In an ideal world, what would they like to be seeing? And what's the gap between what they're actually seeing and what they would like to be seeing? And how would that be different for them or make an impact for them? Because I think people very often, like, our inquiries come in from a couple of different places. Sometimes it's from the HR portion of the organization. They're looking for a program, or they have a persistent challenge that they're trying to overcome. Very often they're coming with a program in mind, or at least a budget in mind, which is very different than getting into a conversation with the owner of an organization when we're out at a networking event, and they're, all we have to say is, well, how's communication between your departments going? And they're like, oh my God, are you inside my brain right now? I can't even pay attention because I got finance arguing with, accounting or whatever. And, there are some really consistent themes that come up in manufacturing and AEC. And if somebody says, I just want you to come in and do this one thing, it depends how easy and close it is to us, to be honest with you, to be able to deliver that. But we are really most interested in companies that understand that learning over time is what's going to make an impact. But first, they have to know that we hear them and that we're listening for them to tell us, and we're not trying to sell them an off-the-shelf program, because that's not our thing. We don't prepackage and sell.
Got it.
And Jenny does, we have a process, and I do generally the first level of inquiry, and then Jenny gets them into the think tank, and they start ideating together. So I would actually kick that over to her, because she actually does the design of the programs that people eventually consume for their people, or consume.
Yeah, I meant what you knew.
Well, honestly, this would be a question I would invite anybody in your audience to consider, in terms of if they're trying to find solutions to some of the stuff that's happening, where communications are breaking down, or they're avoiding conflict, or one of my personal favorites, which is, I am a Gen Xer. We are a generation of workaholics.
Yes.
And we are a generation of fixers. And one of the most important things that all y'all Gen X people out there, I see you, I hear you, and we are all learning how to back the F off, because whereas it is actually a real problem when it comes to the quality of life and trying to have time to go camping with kids and all that sort of stuff. And so what that breaks down to in the workplace is, for example, not letting other people solve problems, right? Jumping in and being a firefighter, or not delegating enough. So people sometimes don't realize that that's a behavior they're exhibiting that's actually preventing appropriate delegation and growth of other workers.
Yes.
But they don't know that until they're in a conversation and somebody is saying, do you want to check the box, or do you want to change that behavior? And they can't answer that question until they even know what that behavior is. So I think that, I would invite anybody who's dealing with challenges like that to say, do I want to check a box, or do I want to understand what I'm doing to get in the way and what my counterpart is doing to get in the way? How are we participating in this challenge? Which is totally different than saying, well, come in and fix my people, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they like being the hero in the story, right? Absolutely. Very often we'll hear them bragging about how they always have to jump in. I'm thinking of that plant manager that we were talking with a while ago, who was like, everybody, they're all a mess. And then I jump in and then I get it resolved and we make our sales by the end of the month. But it's only because, I came together and I called this person. Thank God for me. Well, it won't surprise you that they found a replacement for him.
Yeah.
Right. The challenge is, if he sees himself as the hero in the story, he doesn't ever look at the fact that he's disempowering the people around him from actually solving the problems.
Yep.
Right.
I'm that mastermind that I'm speaking on in moments is I'm talking about aggressive, passive, and assertive behaviors, right? And that falls right into that you're talking about. When you are that passive person, you create resentment and you take away that empowerment. When you say, it's fine, I'll just take care of it, right? When you just do it for people, it creates resentment and it takes away that empowerment. I love that, Ellen. Thank you.
It's also career
Jim,
limiting.
Something to note in terms of like the role of multiple generations in the workplace, right? Because if I look again at the slice of generations, we've got the boomers leading off. We've got the Gen Xers who are mostly in these middle and upper roles. And then you've got up and coming roles. If you've got Gen Xers who have training from the 70s and the 80s to do nothing but make their own macaroni and cheese, fix everything, and think that they have to do it all by themselves, that behavior spreads across an organization. No wonder the next generation of millennials and Gen Z are going, I'm trying to learn how to fix it, but you're not letting me do it. So I think that's a critical part of why the generational conversation is so everywhere right now, because people are really realizing, well, this isn't just a cutesy difference. This is actually a problem that affects production.
Yes. Everything. Yeah, right. It's systemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so normalized.
Yes.
Right? When overwork becomes the norm, you don't even realize, that's the analogy of, you're a goldfish in a bowl. You don't think about the water. When the entire environment is a chronic situation of overwork and you have younger people coming in and they're not willing to do that, the workplace very often will make the younger people or the newer workers wrong, when in fact they're the sane ones.
Yes.
And it's the people in these facilities who are stressed out and they have hypertension and they never go on vacation and they regularly cancel events with their family. It's like, why would anyone opt into that life? And you're telling them, you're saying people don't want to work. They don't want to work like that.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
All right. 2 questions left, my new friends. First is, tell us about the podcast. We haven't even gotten to the podcast. So we haven't gotten to like 4 of the bullet points that I have. So we're going to have to do a second episode at some point. But tell us about the podcast that you two co-host.
I toss that one over to Ellen.
Okay. Manufacturing Shakeup, and it's got its own website. You can find it on LinkedIn. It was an initiative of the Office of Manufacturing in the state of Connecticut and the Chief Manufacturing Officer, Paul Lavoie, who said we need to elevate the awareness of women in manufacturing in Connecticut specifically. So we went out with our producer, Gail Tenenbaum, and she found an entire year's worth, 52 episodes that we recorded of women in manufacturing roles, everything from people who are welding to people who are running third generation companies across our tiny state and gave them a voice and a place, and it created a whole community. And it's part of a larger effort called Elevate Her, which was also came out of the OOM, to create awareness in our very sort of, we have a higher income education oriented state, that manufacturing is a vibrant part of our economy, where there are tons of careers that people can pursue, right? Because we've been such a college oriented society for so long. There are a lot of kids who got left out of that mix and accumulated huge debt, and parents are like, well, I don't want that for my kid. Well, and then they're like, so what? So then you go work at Starbucks. No, you can like get out of high school, and there are apprentice programs now, right? Where you can make a really great salary, and they'll pay for you to learn and all of that. So that's part of that initiative in the state of Connecticut to reintroduce manufacturing as a career option for individuals. I love it. That is equal or better than others. You know what I mean? To elevate it, I think, is just that's a good word. Elevate that. Yeah. All right. So easy to find.
Last question that I ask all of my guests, and again, I had 4 bullet points that we didn't get to, and that's fine. We'll do it again, and maybe one or both of you will pick up on bullets that I haven't asked. But what haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience as we wrap up today?
I would like you to ask me about if there was one number one best practice of a micro behavior that people could do starting Monday morning when they get back to the office after an awesome weekend. And my answer would be find a way to lighten up.
I like that.
Right. We need to, right now we are in, economic turmoil, and we're all experiencing places where we need to adapt, and things are scary, and the pressure's on. And one of the gifts that we bring to our clients, that I try to personally bring to myself every day, is finding the funny. One of my titles on my job is Chief Humor Engineer, because we can use humor to get us through anything. And if we just give ourselves a little space to lighten up, not at anybody's expense, but in a way of just what's funny here? Even in the darkest stuff, it lubricates everything. It's good for our brains, makes better relationships. So,
Ellen, what would you want? What haven't I asked you that you want to share?
You didn't ask me what book I'm reading right now.
I love that. What book are you reading right now?
The Alchemist.
Why does that sound so familiar?
It's been around for 1,000,000 years. It's about, a person's quest.
Yeah.
And and the lessons that they learn along the way. But it's a parable. It's an easy read. It's an afternoon on the couch. But it's got a lot of very telling stories about sort of destiny and creating your own path and trusting yourself, and believing in the signs that we see around us about things that either trusting your spidey sense, kind of, right?
I love it.
Or
Paulo Coelho.
Thank you. Paulo Coelho. Yeah.
I love it. I will read that. I love to consume books and physical books. I don't like Kindle books.
Me too.
For me.
I like them both.
Anyway, both of you, Ellen, Jenny, I just called you Annie, which is a mixture in my brain of your 2 names. Jenny and Ellen, this was a awesome conversation. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much, Jim. You're awesome.
Thank you. A massive thanks to Ellen Feldman-Ornato and Jenny Drescher for joining me today. When you show up fully human, even the toughest crowd can turn into allies. This has been the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. Please share this episode with someone who's trying to lead with guts and empathy.